to record because if I record it, then people just don't show up, And so I'm more motivated on having people show up than I am, just recording something and putting it out there. So I am going to share my screen with you. And Mike, if you see the screen that's the screen sharing, will you nod your head? So it should be okay, perfect. All right, and then I'll move this over here and we resize this so I can see you guys. And if somebody pops up, I'll do it. All right. So let me get rid of this. There we go. So I don't know how many of you look at the financial markets, but I used to be a stock trader, so I look at those things all the time. And I spend probably an hour a day looking at finance, economics, and what's going on in the world, or what's happening in our market, because it affects all of us. And so if you notice, I just pulled these like in the last half hour, but the NASDAQ, its worst drop since 2022. Wall Street pressuring the Fed to take more aggressive rate action. Stock meltdown triggers mad rush for treasuries, in the market that's wrap up, etc. And so this just came off stock market updates, recession fears, and global markets plunging. I knew this was coming last night because the Japanese market had some issues, and everything that we do today is interrelated. It doesn't matter. America doesn't stand on its own any more than, I don't know, Fiji does. It's a worldwide deal. So what happens, globally seems to affect us locally, and what happens locally also affects things globally. And you can see here that within the last hour, it says the S&P is down almost 9%. The NASDAQ fell 5%. Billionaires are now moving to cash. They're selling. So Warren Buffett sold a ton of his Apple shares as well as other stocks. Our Tesla king there, he has also said, sell my stock, sell Tesla. A lot of them are moving to cash. And that's something that happens when markets shift. And part of what creates a market shift is we've had a 21% increase in unemployment year over year. Obviously, we're not at 20, we're still down to around 4%, 4.1%. And so that's pretty good. But what's significant about that is that anytime that you have if you see me looking back and forth, I'm letting people in. We've got, people coming in late. Anytime that you have a 21% increase, anytime, there's always been a recession. For the last 70 years, we have seen a recession every single time that we have hit that 21% point. And so unless, this is the one that breaks the 70-year trend, we're looking at a recession coming up. Now, Utah is beating the nation a little bit. Our unemployment rate is still at 3%. I checked that this morning. The U.S. is 4.1%. Job growth in Utah is 2.4%, versus 1.6%. I talked to some of my friends that are investors in Oklahoma, and they're telling me they're not even getting showings on properties there. The unemployment is risen so fast that it hasn't even hit the data yet. So it's something to remember. But anytime that they have a growth of 21% or more year over year, you see a recession follows for over 70 years. It's been an absolute rule. And so in Utah, if we look at year over year inflation in Utah, it doesn't seem like it's that bad. However, I'm going to tell you that I'm just going to cry personally bullcrap on food only going up 2.1%. And I call it my own personal, it's the Whopper index. What is the cost of the Whopper, right? And that sucker's been climbing. It's between $9 and $11, depending on where I get it at. Shelter has gone up. So shelter, the costs for shelter in Utah have gone up by 5.4%. And the hard thing about that is the year over year increase in value in Utah is only 2.1%. So the cost of that, shelter has gone up twice as high as the current increase in property prices in Utah. Utah is overvalued, which means that there's going to be more pain, more of a fall that's going to happen. And to look at that in perspective, these are the only states that are more overvalued than Utah. So you've got Montana, Idaho, and then you got to go all the way over here to Georgia and Florida. Okay, Florida's just 2 points ahead of us. So these other states have dropped faster than Utah has. Utah hasn't dropped quite as fast as what we've seen in other states, but Utah was 38% here about a year ago. So we are seeing a decrease. Or Utah and Oregon, which is of interest to me because I grew up in Oregon and I'm very familiar with that market. We have an office there. It's about the same income needed, the median income per home needed to buy a house. So statistically, if we pull the whole state, and obviously some areas are different than others, but I'm just pulling the whole state because we've got agents here from probably 4 or 5 different counties. You need $133,000 to buy the average home in Utah, which is $520,000. And so that's the numbers that we run off of. The active residential listings per day, we're up a little bit there, quite a bit actually. If you look over here to the right of the yellow there, you'll see that we're up about 400 listings from this year versus 2023. We had 2009. We're up 400 listings here, and so we're seeing the listing inventory is going up and it's increasing. The sold listings here are down pretty low, however, and they're what they were in 23 and 22. So we're right here in the intersection. You can see it right there. So not a lot is selling. The data is showing us that, for example, the sold listings, maybe we've got 400 more listings, but we've only gone up about 100 more sales. So things are changing. We're moving slowly into a downturn. People have said, "Oh, well, all the indicators have said recession for the last 2 years. It hasn't happened. It's baffled me. They keep kicking the can down the road." But we're starting to see some of these things point this way. So let's talk about what's hot in Utah and what's working, what's hot and what's not. All right. Higher end houses are definitely not hot. I've had a number of those that have had drops of, I had one that was appraised at 2.1 million, sold for 1.6, and they're happy to get it. Another one was, at 1.3, sold in the 900s. If you're not in Park City, the higher end houses are selling very slowly. What is selling well are houses that have accessory dwelling units. Okay. Now it's interesting because I don't know how many of you have been involved in accessory dwelling units. I'm sure Eric Lee has, for a little bit, but some of the municipalities have been a major pain in the ass when it comes to getting one of these approved to like put a little tiny house or something in back. I know Salt Lake City has sucked at it and they just don't want to do it, but they don't want to admit it. So they've made it difficult. And the legislators has said that they're going to go back and revisit the law and the statutes and take more power away from the city and give it, to state statute to allow that. But houses with mother-in-laws or accessory dwelling units are hot topics and hot movers right now. They're moving a lot faster than anything else. And so that's something to be aware of. And it doesn't even have to necessarily, it helps if it's set up and it's got a little kitchenette or something like that in there. But one of the things that you want to point out is that it could, have an accessory dwelling unit if it's a potential. So if you got a bi-level split, those can be, up, down. My son, we created one for him in his house. And that was really good because his mortgage was $2,300 a month. And I think he's getting $1,800 a month as far as, rents from renting the upstairs. It's just him and his wife and a baby. So they didn't need much. And they're living, in the bottom level. Multi-families are hot and those prices are going up too. Anything with an ADU, whether it's inside or an individual house out in the backyard, that's selling at a premium and it's selling quick. I just added one in the property down in Orem we'll put back on the market because at 650,000. It was one of the lower priced houses, if not the lowest priced house, in a very nice area in Orem, but it was sitting on the market. And so I will report back to you when we put that on the market. I think we've got maybe another 10 days until we're finished with that, but we just cut in a stairs and an entry down to the basement, etc. But triplexes, duplexes, fourplexes, anything else, those are all moving quickly, and they have seemed to be selling at a good price on the market. House hacking. So this is more and more common. Eric, you're familiar with that. Do you want to explain that?
Basically, is this referring to taking your house and finding some way to make income off of it?
Yeah, like renting rooms, and yeah.
Yeah. And I see people even, I've seen them renting out one room in their main living area. They don't even have a separate basement. They're doing an Airbnb with one room, and then they wake up in the morning and there's a stranger in the kitchen with them. And I
Yeah,
don't get it, but that's what happens when you've got 2.1% appreciation on food, right?
yeah.
Your Whopper goes from $5 to what would 2% of that be?
Oh, 2% of
$5.10.
yeah,
What a
yeah,
joke, huh?
yeah. It went from $6 to $9.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, crazy. So that's it. House hacking is pretty common. It's especially common. Some of the people are, well, I would say our age. I'm 60. Some of the people my age are doing this now. I've got one of my agents has been renting a house out, a rooms out in his house. He's got 6 bedrooms. He's making $3,000 a month off of it. And so he's got, steady income. He's a single guy. He says, I don't mind the company and I just have house rules. My nephew is doing this. And he's, probably 30 years old. But house hacking has become more and more of a reality when it comes to doing real estate in today's market in Utah. And part of that is Utah is one of the most expensive states to live in. It is expensive. When you look at what was needed, 133,000, that's more than just about everybody. In fact, you have to go really far back east to see that, unless you're looking at Colorado. Colorado was 140,000, was next to us. So people are doing things that are, that they need to get by because they need housing, want housing, etc. And so house hacking can be a really good thing. Short-term rental statistics and trends for 2024. Like Eric talked about, doing an Airbnb. That's a good thing. I rent my basement apartment out, and I'm a sucker, so I rent it out cheaply. I think I'm renting it for $1,300 a month. It's a single dad. He's been with me for like 10 years, and I like him. And but before him, I was renting it out 10 years ago for $1,500 a month. And my neighbors are getting, maybe $3,000 or $4,000 a month for those that are doing Airbnb. And so it can be a good thing. You can usually get double if you manage it right. However, more people are doing it, so the prices are coming down for Airbnb. It's good to be aware of that there's a little bit more competition there. Some key stats on this from 2023 that bode well for 2024 is that the demand was really good at the end of the year in 2023. People are still, wanting to stay away from home. There's more people doing staycation, but still there's 64 billion in annual revenue, which is the highest yet. There was 24 million nights stayed in July alone. The most demand a month on record. I mean, that's significant. And 1.464 million available listings, in September, the most ever in 1 month. And so, looking forward, people are putting more property on the market for that. And so if that's something that you can bring up these things to your clients, especially since most movement in the market is going to be probably sub 700 is what I would say. That's probably where the vast majority of homes are going to move. And you can say, there's these possibility or that possibility. Just listen to them. And if they're young, if they're looking, how to buy a house, if they're concerned about costs and you can say, well, this is a possibility or that's a possibility. And like Eric said, I don't know if you remember couch surfing. I think it's still probably out there, but it's like couchsurfing.com or net or something like that. And you go stay on somebody's couch for, well, I don't know if it was free or a couple bucks or something, but I don't know. I'm not quite that free, I guess, with other people, but it's out there anyway. So rural real estate, that's another trend that surprised me. And I was looking at market trends here. And this was from March 1st. But I have some agents doing incredible business in rural areas. And I'm talking 50 plus transactions a year. And they are moving property very quickly because a lot of, guess who, retirees are moving to rural areas. So, for example, here in Utah, and Eric can talk more about the rural areas up in Davis County, but Fruitland, I've got agents working out in Fruitland, which is out close to Duchesne in some of those areas. Those properties are moving, and they're moving quickly. Uh, a a tiny house, and I'm talking like a tiny house, typical tiny house, sold out there. Some guy put one up. It was really cute. It was really small. Got one of those lots. It was like 20 grand, put it on a lot and sold it for 400,000 like that. And I have friends that have moved out there that are retiring. People are moving into more rural areas for a variety of reasons. Some of those are, well, probably the main one is the cost. So if they have family in Utah, nobody ever likes to leave Utah. I've never figured that out. It's a great place, but it wasn't on my top 10 list when I moved here. And my cousins, I got a cousin who's always out of work. He turns around nursing homes. And so that's what he does. A nursing home starts having problems. He's the guy they call. He goes in, they pay him a lot of money. He turns around, gets it, gets it producing. And the next thing you know, he's laid off because, they're paying him a lot of money, right? And so once he's got turned around, he's laid off, he's always having to find another job. And I told him, I said, Keith, why didn't you leave the state? Go to Oregon, go to Washington, go to California, anywhere. I said, they need your services everywhere. And he said, oh, no, I could never leave Utah. And he wouldn't even think about it. And it's pretty obvious when you look at attorney wages. Attorney wages are, like less than UPS drivers by half on average in Utah. It's because people don't want to leave, so there's a lot of them. And so they don't want to leave the state, but they're okay with moving an hour or two away. And so some of those areas are seeing some growth. In fact, our old CEO, Eric Cooley, bought a little piece of land up in Star Valley that was, really cheap and is, putting a small house up there. And so that's something to be aware of. But rural real estate, it is increasing. You might want to take a look outside of your regular area if you're not doing anything there. Also, there's seller financing, like we mentioned. Marvin shared. Thank you, Marvin, for sharing that with us. But he said it was a great deal. Got 4.5% for his buyers here this last Wednesday, and is excited about it. And I'm sure they were excited about it too, weren't they, Marvin? It's when you're not, in fact, you want to tell us what did they say when it was all said and done?
I gave them the keys when I got the keys yesterday for them, and they were extremely happy. They have tried for the last 2 years until they found me. And I have an investment property, a flip that I finished about a month ago, and they came and looked at it, and that's how I got them as clients. And so now I'm also working on their family members that are also trying to do seller finance. And it's been a great experience, and they were happy. They were really extremely happy.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, a lot more, they say every 1% move in the market corresponds to 11% move in available buyers. And so if you were at 6.5%, and you went down to 4.5%, it's actually closer to 7% really. So, you got about 28% more buyers available at that price range or at that interest rate than you would typically, at today's with the regular interest rates. So seller financing, it's been booming, it's skyrocketing. It's a lot more of it going on. We're seeing a ton of it, happen. I'm getting a ton of those. I'm sure, Eric, are you seeing a lot of those come across your desk as well?
I haven't seen a lot of them.
Really?
Yeah, I've seen a few, but not a lot.
Maybe it's because it's my, in my branch, I got a ton of people doing, those type of deals. But
Yeah.
I talked to GT Title, and they're up 1,000% on the number of seller financing deals they're doing.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see, but that's also a potential out there, and we've got a number of people taking advantage of that. Also, VA, and FHA loan assumptions. Yeah, those are taking a while, but they're good when you can get them. So, Eric, do you want to talk about a little bit about? I was going to hit some of these forums in that, but do you want to talk about some of the changes that are coming up here in 10 days or so, 12 days?
Yeah, can I share my screen?
Yeah, let me give you the. Hold on a second. Let me stop sharing here, and I'll let you cover that. Okay, hold on a second, Eric. I'm trying to make you the host. I just made you the host.
Okay. So most of you are probably in the Salt Lake Board. Utah County Association also put it out. I know Northern Wasatch shared what they had produced already. So most of the boards, in fact, I just saw Iron County last week also share what Salt Lake and Utah County did in conjunction. But Craig Wagner and Peter, can't remember his last name, put together a pretty good legal video. That's what Randall was just about to show you there. However, we watched that, and me, after watching it multiple times, and I'm pretty good, guys, I study the forms. Like, I actually go in every week. It's part of my regular to-do list. I study the forms. I study the law. I watch the videos. And then I thought audaciously that I was all ready to give a training last Tuesday to my office. And a bunch of you might have been on there. We had about 50 people on and did the training, and it was rapid fire, real life questions. And it wasn't from people that had no idea what was going on. It was from people that have been thinking about this for a while and thought of different scenarios and were saying, well, what about this? And what about this? And quite frankly, I felt like, it felt a little bit like a circus. Like I was not prepared for all of those. And so I'm writing down these questions like mad, these real life scenarios. And I reviewed them with our attorney the next day on Wednesday. And together on Thursday, we did videos for 2 hours together. And one of the things that we did is on Tuesday, it was almost a 2-hour block trying to talk about the different videos and jumping from one to the other. And so we split them up, and I want to share the screen with you and show you where to find them.
Oh, good.
If you're not yet subscribed to Elite Agent Training, just go to YouTube, type in Elite Agent Training, and you can subscribe there. And then when you go to playlists, like right underneath the channel name, playlists, I've got several different channels. I've got, some interviews that I've done with agents. Sometimes I deep dive into the forms, and we'll spend an hour and a half on some of the basic forms. And it's really good to get in there and, dissect all these things. But we added 2 new playlists. Now, one of them only has 1 video in it. It's this NAR settlement update. And we did this for Equity Nationwide. We tried to pull out all the stuff that was Utah specific. This one was 50 minutes. So it's a longer video, but this is the one that we are considering. And if you took Carter, he's our attorney, if you took his advice, it would be a required video for everybody to watch. And what it does is it takes the settlement details that we're all aware of, but it gets into the weeds with them so that you really understand how it applies to you. And then what we've done is we created a separate playlist with the Utah forms updates. So if I go into this full playlist here, we've got addenda to the exclusive buyer broker and exclusive ERS. I'll come back to that one. Let's talk first of all about the exclusive buyer broker agreement and the showing form overview. So I think it was Iron County or Washington County put together a showing form. Some of you have sent me one from Zillow. They've put together a showing form. And the agreement states, I'm going to give you the canned version here, so the condensed version. I still want you to go in and watch it. But the settlement agreement with NAR says that before you do any form of showings, virtual or live, you have to have an agreement in writing. And it has to stipulate how much you're being compensated, the terms of the agreement. But it doesn't say it has to be an exclusive buyer broker agreement. You could go out and show homes and write 0 in there. I'm not getting paid anything. I'll do this for you for free. And that's basically what Zillow's form does. What people don't understand is that it also creates no obligation for them to use you. So you can go out and you can sign a showing agreement, show them homes all day long. They can come back that evening with a different agent and write an offer on it. You have 0 protection with that. So you're in compliance with the rule from the settlement agreement, but it provides 0 protection to you. So it is a form out there. It is a legal form to use in response to the settlement agreement. I still don't agree with it. I'm still a big fan of take 15 minutes, communicate your value, have them sign an exclusive buyer broker agreement, even if it is just for that one property. At least if you're showing that property and they decide to write an offer, they're bound to use you. Otherwise, you're completely devaluing yourself, in my opinion.
For years,
Okay.
Eric, I have told my agents to always get a written agreement, even if it's for that specific property. And because, exactly what you talked about has happened. They'll go out, they'll show a property, they don't have a written agreement. And then the next thing you know, Randall, I showed this property and somebody else, they're working with somebody else. I'm like, how long is it going to take before you guys start getting a written agreement? I mean, show up at the property, have one in hand, say, look, state law, my broker, whatever, says that we've got to do this, but always ink the deal. If you don't have ink on paper, you got nothing.
And at the same time, I've walked away from buyers. I've had 5 showings set. We meet at the first house. I give them my little spiel and they say, oh no, I've got 4 or 5 other agents that are looking at homes for me as well. And if I find one myself without an agent that I'm not using anybody, I said, okay, I'm not going to show you homes today. They're like, what? I thought we had these scheduled. I said, I do have them scheduled. I'll call right now and cancel every one of them. But I value my time more than that. And I walked away from her and she was flabbergasted. No, nobody's ever required this. And I said, I'm probably the best agent you've ever met, because any good agent would never tolerate this.
Yeah.
Walked away. Don't feel bad about it at all. And I have a great story to tell for the rest of my life from it. So communicate your value. And that's why I say 99% of people that I communicate my value will sign with me, because I had that one experience. So I can't say 100%. But there's that one lady that I still remember. And I walked away from her and canceled all the showings and left her with her jaw on the ground. Here's some questions, though, that we answer in this. Okay. This is an obvious one. Most of you know it. Do I need a showing agreement to show my own listing? Do I need a showing agreement if I'm doing open houses for everybody that's coming in the open house? What if another agent in my office does an open house for me? Do I then need does that other agent who doesn't necessarily have the agency agreement with my clients, does he need a showing agreement to show all of these homes? We answer all of those questions in these videos. We also answer, well, the big one, honestly, is this ERS over. Okay, this is the one where we had some real changes take place. And I want you to go in and look at it, because this is the one after going through the form, after watching the video that Craig Wagner put out. I was starting to explain it wrong, and Carter jumped in and said, actually, Eric, that's not how it works. So you've got section 2.1 on this that says this is your compensation for selling the home. So if I typically charge 6%, I put 3 in section 2.1. That is not the commission for me and for a buyer's brokerage that I'm going to share. I only put my amount in section 2.1. Section 2.2, the way I was seeing it was, and you guys, if you're not familiar with these forms, you should click on the links. I'm sure you've all got them from the boards. But section 2.2 shows an amount that you could offer to a buyer's agent, right? Now, here's where I got it wrong. Section 2.2 says this isn't the amount that we're offering to a buyer's agent. It says that the seller is authorizing us to communicate that they are willing to pay that amount. Now, I actually love how this works with some of these other forms. The seller is authorizing us to communicate that they're willing to pay this amount. This isn't an obligation that they have to pay that amount. They're simply authorizing us to communicate it. And then in section 2.3, it says if a buyer's agent comes along that we're going to give compensation to, it won't be any more than what they've authorized us to communicate in section 2.2. That amount will be added to the amount of section 2.1, which is everything that the brokerage collects. So the brokerage collects it, and technically it works the same as it did before, where it's one broker paying the other broker, right? Here's the questions. What if an unrepresented buyer comes along and you do the whole thing with an unrepresented buyer? Do you get the 6%? No, you don't. You get the 3%. That's what you get. They've authorized you to advertise that you could pay up to 3% or whatever you negotiate. Again, we have to throw in those words now with everything. Everything's negotiable, right? So when I'm saying 3% and 6%, understand these are just scenarios. But the seller said you can offer that, you can go tell people that we'll pay 3% to a buyer's agent, but it's not an obligation on it. So if there is no buyer's agent involved, so what about a limited agency situation? Well, now you're the buyer's agent, but you have to have that communication with the seller because it isn't obvious, and it's not a guaranteed compensation that's built into section 2.2. It's simply seller saying we're willing to offer this. Now, what I like about that is how it ties into this brokerage compensation agreement or brokerage payment addendum. So when we go in and talk about these, again, the real world scenario, the perfect world scenario that Craig Wagner talks about is I want to write an offer and it's one of Randall's property. I call Randall up. Randall answers the phone immediately and says, "Hey, Eric, how you doing?" I said, "Great. We're writing an offer on your property. Tell me what kind of things the seller would like. Do they need a few extra days to move in? We want to make this offer very favorable to them. And by the way, is there an offer of compensation?" And Randall says, "Of course there is. We're offering 7% compensation just to the buyer's agent." Ooh, I'm thrilled about that, right? Actually, that brings up a different point. Down here in the exclusive buyer broker agreement, if you are not able to negotiate your commission, and so you think, hey, I'm just going to put 1% or 0% in here, if you're in the habit, there are a lot of agents that have put in 0% because like, oh, I'm getting compensated from the listing brokerage. This actually changes it so you cannot receive more than 0. So in this case, if I put 3% and Randall says, yeah, we're doing this special, we're offering 7% to the buyer's agent, I cannot accept it. We cannot receive more than what I've signed in my exclusive buyer broker agreement. I can't negotiate it up. I cannot add an addendum to negotiate it up unless I'm providing somehow more services. Otherwise, it's not going to stand. You can always negotiate it down. So I've got one agent said, I'm going to do 4% on all my buyer agency agreements, and I can negotiate it down from there. But you can't negotiate it up. Okay. That's part of the terms of the settlement agreement. So anyways, I come in here, I call Randall. He says, yes, we're offering all of this. Dave, I'll get to you in a second. We're offering all of this compensation here. And I say, okay, well, the most I can accept is 4% because I've signed a 4% buyer agency agreement. And, Randall wanted to give me 7. Where does that extra 3 go to? Does it go to Randall or does it go to the seller? So we answer those questions in here, right? Now, that's the perfect world scenario. What is the real world scenario? The real world is I call up Randall. Randall's gone. He's in Nepal for 2 months. Okay. I'm just picking on you a little bit. Randall always has somebody covering for him. But let's say that Randall's one of those 80% of agents that doesn't. Okay. So I call up Randall and nothing. I'm like, man, I'm writing an offer. I'd love to know more about what your clients need. Is there an offer of compensation? And I get no response. And so I've got to write up the offer. So absent any compensation agreement in place, when you look at the language of the broker payment addendum, I'm going to use this brokerage payment addendum in almost every circumstance moving forward, unless they clear the changes to the real estate purchase contract that are currently with the Division of Real Estate waiting for final approval. If they do that, then this brokerage payment addendum is basically built into your standard offer, and it'll be in place on everything. But for now, you guys, if you can't get this brokerage compensation agreement in place prior to writing an offer, use a brokerage payment addendum on everything. Okay. And it makes up the difference. Now, you can use this in two ways. You can use it because you don't know if there's any compensation at all being offered because the agent hasn't responded to you, or if they're offering less than what you've signed in your exclusive buyer broker agreement. So if they're offering 1% or $1, which I've seen, then you can say, okay, the listing brokerage is offering me 1%, so I would put 2% in the broker's payment addendum, and the seller is then satisfying the remainder of my client's obligation. So anyways, we talk about those forms and how they work, but the language in these works really well when you understand how the language works in this ERS, okay, in the exclusive right to sell. And then the other big thing to be aware of is that come August 17th, by the way, I do think all these forms were released last night, so they should all be available to you. Now, I'm not sure if they're up on the MLS yet. I haven't checked, but they should have all been released last night. Anyways, come August 17th, every buyer that you currently have and every seller that you currently have, you must add an addendum. And the addendum basically changes the language in section 2.2 of those agreements to reflect the language that's currently in the new exclusive buyer broker or exclusive right to sell. So everybody needs to be familiar with how these work, the exclusive buyer broker, exclusive right to sell, because even your current clients need to sign the addenda with those changes.
I thought when I saw the Iron County one, they said that hadn't changed. If they were under contract prior to the 17th, you'd run with the old contract. Are they just wrong on that, or what's?
Maybe if they're under contract, that's the case. I know that it's not grandfathered. I mean, Carter again said, because I asked him straight up if they were under contract, and he said, I said, is there any guarantee of compensation still? Because it was on the MLS. We have the MLS printout. He says, yeah, probably. But if it were me, I'd double check everything and I'd get it signed. So I know David Willis had a question.
Yeah, well, I wanted, that was part of it. Okay, yeah, here's my question. So if I'm representing a seller and the buyer shows up and says, I want you to write the offer, my client, because now they're no longer bound to what we agreed to in their listing agreement. And he says to me, well, I don't want to pay you. I want you to do it for 3% that you're getting paid. I think that's fair. And I said, well, this buyer has signed an agency relationship with me, buyer agency for 3%, let's say. They're not going to be able to buy your house because that won't be satisfied because they don't have the funds to do that. So what do you want to do? And he'll sell it. At that point, I anticipate people feeling as though I have some obligation, some fiduciary to the seller, for example, in this scenario, to help him sell his house at my expense. And so,
yeah, that's not how fiduciary works. Fiduciary works that you put your client's interest before yours, but not to the point of harming yourself. And by the way, your background makes me sick. I can't even watch you.
Sorry.
Getting motion sick over here.
Let me stop video. Yeah, stop video. Oops. Anyway, so yeah, so what I was saying was, if I have the seller and then I have a buyer for that seller, so it'd be a limited agent, and that seller or that buyer for that matter, but the buyer, let's assume the buyer signed a buyer broker for 3%, and now the seller who said I could verbally communicate that he'd pay 3%, his disposition is I don't want to pay the 3%. I don't want to pay anything.
Okay, so rather than get into the weeds on the questions, we do talk about that in these videos. Have you watched them yet?
Fair enough. That's all I need to know.
Okay, go in and watch them. If you have questions after you watch them, feel free to reach out to me or Randall or whoever your managing broker is, But watch them first because we do cover all of these different things in there.
Okay.
Mike, you had a question.
Yeah, just real quick on any existing listing that we have out there, is the board going to just wipe out that part on there with the BBC, or do we need to go in there and close that out ourselves?
No, the MLS will remove it.
Okay.
I think they're
So
removing it on the 14th. That automatically goes away. And then also, if you watch the video, I show you where with Pro Agent websites, the guy that owns Pro Agent websites, Doug Green, he's already thought about this, and there is a way. He's created a field where you can add your, if you're the listing agent, you can add how much compensation you're offering to a buyer's agent.
Yeah, because the only place that we can't advertise that is the MLS, right?
Correct. But
Yeah.
even though our Pro Agent websites are a syndicated website, you can't have anything in the comments. You can't have anything hidden. And sorry, I just scratched my nose, so it's bleeding. But if it's syndicated to your website, you can go into your website and add that in specifically. That's fine. And again, with Pro Agent websites, he's created a field just for that purpose. So I show you where to do that in the video as well.
And we spoke about this last week. I was on your training, but some of them weren't here, and I just want to see if there was anything has changed, because we could put like in our comments, say, for more information, go to our website.
Sure.
Because we're not telling them there's buyer broker compensation there. We're just saying for more information. And I think if people start doing that, people are going to get the idea that, okay, that's why we're sending you there.
Yeah, you can do that.
There.
Yeah, Michael.
So I did what you mentioned, to go into the site editor and did the commissions, and then I go to my website, and I just haven't seen it on my listings. Have you seen it on your listings?
I haven't tested it yet.
Okay.
So yeah, so just reading some of the comments in here, the listings that are under contract, again, my understanding with everything was that it should be like none of this ruling is retroactive. But if we've got buyers and sellers, we do need to be adding that addenda to those. And again, if they're already under contract, again, I'm not sure if they're going to require that. That's a question I can ask Carter. But when I ask Carter, I know what his answer is going to be. It's going to be nobody knows yet. You know, there's so many ways this thing could play out. So if you want to be safe, extra disclosures never hurts, you know.
Yeah, that's and that makes sense. You can never over disclose, right?
Yeah. And so Chris just shared this one where they've got the key in the lockbox and it says 3% on the key. You can do that, but remember, guys, that doesn't mean that we don't get our stuff in writing. So that communicates, okay, they're offering it, but you still have to, you know, that we can't take a picture of that key and says, oh, this binds them to pay me 3%. The thing that I'm really worried about is agents that aren't in training. You know, we've got 29 people in here right now out of, you know, combined multiple hundreds. And what about all the ones that don't get these agreements in place, that just think that they're going to go and close the deal and not get compensated? And you guys may very well be working with them on the other side of a transaction. You know, they might be the listing agent and you're trying to get a compensation agreement signed. They're like, what is this? Why are you trying to do it? And you may have to be educating other agents as well. But I'm glad that you guys are on here learning this stuff. So please do take the time to watch these videos. We did try to be comprehensive with all of those questions that you've asked. But again, now Carter, not only is he our attorney, he's a licensed agent, but he was on the forms commission that developed these forms. And so he has some extra insight into the language that they used and why they used it and everything. And it's very good. But even then, there's certain things where you ask him and he's like, we don't know how it's going to play out. I mean, there's a lot of things there's a lot of unknowns about this and some of the dominoes that they may tip that we haven't anticipated. So just do your best out there. So
Perfect. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. I was just trying to look here. The purchase price of by broker's payment shall be made in addition to any other compensation. Yeah, it looks like somebody was just, let's see, too small. So the main thing is go through the video. So I'll make this a copy of this video. I'll post it on YouTube. I'll make it available to everybody here, as well as individual links to both of those trainings, the Utah forms and then the NAR explanation that Eric did on a lead agent websites. And I'll send that out to everybody here today. But just be informed. When I never heard anybody say, "I wish I was less informed."
yeah,
Be informed. There's a lot going on. A lot is happening in the market, and the people that are informed, the people that attend trainings regularly, the people that are always trying to up their game, those are the ones that stay in the business, that make the most money and have the most success, because there's opportunity in every market. And and I can guarantee you that the 29 people that are here are more likely to be successful than anybody else that I put out there that's not attending any trainings. If I was to match them up 29 per 29. I heard somebactually say once, I've heard this statistic a couple of times, said that the top 10% of real estate investors and real estate agents attend a minimum of one seminar or one training per year. And that's not a very high bar, but if you're going to attend things, you put you immediately in the top 10%. So that's a good place to be. All right. Any other questions coming up on market, how to deal with things? It's really not going to be that big of a deal. I mean, it's like, we're just negotiating our negotiating our fees, what we're getting. I like the idea of, putting 4% instead of 3%. And that way we can always knock it down. If somebody came to me, I'm still offering the $1,500 contract signing bonus, which is not tied to whether it closes or not. So you bring me a deal, and as soon as we go under contract, I'll cut $1,500 to Eric. You through Eric, but I don't think those things will be affected. But
I agree with Randall. I think for the good agents, it's not going to be a big deal. For me, it'll barely be a bump in the road, because I've been doing like Randall. I sit down and communicate my value with buyers, and that's all that this change demands. It does complicate things a little bit on the commission side, where there's no guarantee of compensation, so we have to negotiate that. It just means that we're being better communicators. Mike has his hand up. He actually had a really good comment at our Tuesday meeting that we added to the training, that if I put 4% in my BAC and have to reduce it down, I think it was you, Mike, that made the comment, make that reduction particular to that property. So in case that sell falls through and we move on finding other homes, I haven't made a blank reduction in my compensation. I've just made one specific to that, and then I'm back up to 4% for everything else that we're looking at after that point. Mike, you had a question though.
Yeah, I am actually meeting with a lady today to list a house. Should I try and find those new forms, or just they're not available yet?
I thought they said they were planning on releasing those August 4th. Sometimes
I'm looking on the MLS right now and I'm not seeing them.
Yeah, I didn't see them on the MLS. Rebecca
Eric?
said she didn't see them on the UAR. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I looked on the UAR just now and I couldn't find them either.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and Rebecca's pretty good with her forms. Let's see, forms. I'm on the UAR too. Oh, I've got to log in. Okay, they've got exclusive right to sell listing agreement and agency disclosure. Download form.
And that's on UAR that you're finding those?
Yeah, it says revised March 4th, 2024. Yeah, that's the old one.
That's the old one.
I don't think they're going to come out till it was the 14th, the 15th, depends on the board. But somebody's asking the 199, Jen's asking the 199 brokerage fee. Do we add that to our percentage on the buyer broker agreement? Yeah, I add, whatever my percentage is plus, whatever the fees are. I usually add 750. So, yeah.
So you can do that, but we still need that form signed.
Yep. Yeah.
If you're adding fees, then we talk to a lot of attorneys. Anytime you add fees, you have to say what those fees are for.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
from the brokerage, there was a class action lawsuit against, I'm not sure if it's class action. It was a big lawsuit against Coldwell. And they lost millions of dollars arguing that their junk fees were real fees. But we've had all our fees from that brokerage administrative fee form. We've had those fees cleared by multiple attorneys saying that these are reasonable for a brokerage to charge. And so please use that form rather than just putting it in you can call it commission. You're just increasing your commission. If you want to pay it yourself or something, you can negotiate anything you want for your commission. But if you're saying, hey, my brokerage charges this, so I have to add this in there, then use the correct form.
Good point.
If you're saying, hey, this is my commission, then you can put in 199 plus 3% or whatever you want to. But don't try to blame that on the brokerage if you're not using the correct form that describes what those payments are for.
Absolutely. No, that's great. Well, thank you, Eric, and thank you, everyone. Any other questions? If you want to unmute yourself, we got like a couple minutes, 2 minutes here. We could
please take the time to go watch those videos. Okay.
Yes.
Again, the settlement overview is the long one. It's 50 minutes. But Carter and I afterwards looked at the time and we're like, we wanted to make it a lot shorter, but we're like, there really wasn't a lot of fat to trim in there. Most of that stuff is pretty important information. So I would encourage you to take 2 hours over the next 2 weeks and just set the time aside to watch those.
Absolutely. Nope, absolutely. All right, Eric, you want to give me back the control so I can finish the recording here and the 3 dots and make me the admin again, I guess.
Yeah, I just made it so multiple people can share.
Oh, good.
I don't know how to do the
All
other
right,
one.
I'm trying to find out where. Oh, somewhere in here I've got. I think that's it. So, all right, well, you guys have a great week, and we'll look forward to hearing your success with the new forms and everything else. And it's always good to see you here. A great way to start off Monday. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, somehow I'm like frozen down here. It's not letting me. Let's see here. Okay, no, that's not it. Hey, Mike. Yeah, you're welcome, Chris. Yeah. Okay, where is the? Oh, there we go. Okay. Took me a second and